Apparently I'm live. Back again. Hello. So I'm just continuing on the same tact here. Maybe I'll get around to expounding my musings on totalitarianism. But I think I might talk about totalitarian authoritarianism. Totalitarian authoritarianism is an authoritarian state that is so total in its control that every action that every person is now being dictated to by an authority that also uses uh, say guilt trips and fear to control them. I'm going to call that authoritarian totalitarianism. Oh no, it was the other way around, wasn't it? Totalitarian authoritarianism, which is sort of it's an ideal, it's an ideal way of being able to control the masses for anyone who's a neo-Marxist, a proto-fascist, or indeed a quasi-Leninist. It's I'm a bit concerned about neo-Marxism. It's a bit like in the rise and fall of Reginald Perrin. There was a guy called Jerry, who was an ex-military man who was afraid of the socialist takeover of England. And it's great. He actually ended up having their own series called The Fairly Secret Army. Very funny, very interesting. Using him as the main character. It only went for about 2 seasons, but there's no way they'd be able to do it now. There's no way they'd be, because really, the Fairly Secret Army were a bunch of like extreme right wingers. Oh my god, it was just so wrong. But you can't do that sort of thing now. It's the freedom of speech of people is being completely compromised to the point where you can't really say anything without offending someone in some way or another, even if you're talking about yourself. You can't, it's ridiculous. So I'm going to start maybe talking in ways which probably go against the community guidelines of YouTube, because they're not as politically correct as current generations think that things should or shouldn't be. So in my day, we would call a spade, and not hurt anyone in the process. A spade is an implement for digging the soil. We would call things what they are. And it wasn't meant in any derogatory fashion or anything. It was just a way of actually, saying what people weren't or were, So, I'm a honky, and I can't say I'm proud of being a honky. I don't know if I'm proud or not proud, because I actually don't really care what race of human being I am. And another thing about language, newspeak. Hey, let's talk about newspeak. I'm going to talk about newspeak. Newspeak is important. The way people think about things and the way that they describe things. There seems to be a current trend these days to talk about people as being humans, right? Instead of like human beings or people or, the human race. We just have this word human. It's a dehumanizing term that's basically trying to sort of like view people as from outside of being a person. I mean, if you're viewing yourself, you go, oh, that's another person. It's not a human. You're not an alien going, oh, look, there's a human. It's like, actually, there's another one of me. It's another human being. It's another person. Okay, it's not a human. What are you, an alien observing from outside of the human race, sort of going, oh, a human? And it's like, but you're a human as well. It's a fellow person. Okay, it's a person. It's people, right? And it's almost as if the terminologies that people are using for almost everyday things has become almost clinical and scarily non-attached to any sort of normal social organization. For example, I was reading an article on Facebook just recently, and it was all about how, certain traumas of childhood cause this, that, and the other, and it continually referred to other people in that person's life as, as their caregiver. It's trying to use the word caregiver to replace like parent. Okay, like your mum and your dad. Okay, your mum and your dad, sure, they might have been your caregivers, but also who else were your caregivers? A lot of people, when I grew up, there's an old saying that it takes a village to raise a child, not just their mum and dad. There's extended family, there's the community around them. It's not just one caregiver who's like, ended up creating the fucked up psyche that they've got as an adult that they have to try and deal with and try and reorganize to actually become a functioning member of society again. But by using these notions and these words like caregiver instead of like parent or mum or dad or and saying all the other things, it's dehumanizing the human experience to the extent where again these sort of like biological robots that just respond to the environment as if we don't even have consciousness. We can't even think for ourselves. We're like all machines that the state has to keep a complete control of and look after as if we're babies. It's insane, really. So I'll continue on with this. In my experience, I think we have too many people trying to exert a control over the people that is not appreciated or wanted, and the amount of control that they've had over us has been incrementally getting more and more. So almost as if we're being conditioned to getting used to greater and greater levels of subservience, serving the state, obedience, and what other terms could I use? So okay, so we're obedient little consumers. First, we were, said, well, you have to get a job, you have to use money. Good example of this was there was a baby at the supermarket that I remember about 15 years ago, and I was looking after my boy on my own 24/7. He was about 4 then, and this couple had a wee baby at the supermarket checkout, and I'm pretty sure the baby probably wouldn't have been able to even say mum or dad or anything, and it was going money, 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 money. It sort of made me feel sick inside. It's this little baby that is, his first word is money. What does that say about the world? What does it say about our values? What does it say about anything, really? It's sad, really. Instead of saying mummy, it's saying money. This baby saying money. I mean, I think, I don't know if it was a boy or girl, so I said it. I mean, I don't mean to dehumanize the baby by calling it rather than he or she, because I can tell it wasn't in blue or pink. It was just a baby in some, nondescript. And it's quite hard to actually sometimes tell the sex of babies. Some boys look very, very like girls when they're young. When my boy was a little baby, he looked very much like a girl. Everyone thought, "Oh, what a beautiful little girl you've got." And I go, "No, he's a boy. Can't you tell? Look, he's in blue, for God's sake." I mean, I just purposely dress him in things that made him look like a boy. Blue, blue. Oh, you got a little girl. You put them in pink. Blue on. No, because people would still think he was a little girl. That's because we let his locks come out. He had beautiful, long, golden, flowing, curly locks. So he did look a bit like a girl because he let his hair grow long. It's a Scottish thing, really. But yeah. So yeah, it's quite interesting, really. With this little baby, the first thing it says is money instead of mummy. And that is in a sense that story encapsulates exactly what I was saying before, because the values that we have in society. The state wants to control us with lucre, with, you know, the lyrics of the song I wrote, Big Brother of Babylon, pretty much sums it up, in the several verses. And I will recite it right now. Here are the words to the song, Big Brother of Babylon. I'm not going to sing it, I'm just going to recite it as the poem that it is, which I set to music. As I was writing it, I also created a melody for the words. But I'm not going to sing it. I'm just going to tell you what the lyrics are. So this is Big Brother of Babylon. I wrote it for my reggae band years ago, where I was in a soul reggae band. Yeah, here it goes. This is Big Brother of Babylon. You're not my brother, big brother. You're not my sister, Babylon. Big brother of Babylon. Your rule goes on. We don't need your plastic-coated lie, brainwashing the masses on who should live or die. The system ranked in pride of place, hiding behind corporations without a face, trading in rivers of human bloods, oil-hungry empires, radioactive floods. O earthly mother, O heavenly father, Jah, surely there must be a better way, a more enlightened future, a more enlightened day, where people may live harmoniously in harmony. Big brother of Babylon, your rule goes on. Big, 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 biggity, big, 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 big brother. You're not my brother, big brother. You're not my sister, Babylon. Big brother of Babylon. He has eyes on all that you see in order to usurp the people's rights to be free. In error, forcing us to use filthy lucre, tool of his tether. O son of Babylon, machine of the beast, you have enslaved us. We won't be your feast. Big brother of Babylon, your rule goes on. You're not my brother, big brother. You're not my sister, Babylon. Big brother of Babylon, your rule goes on. So I could break down the lyrics of that song, but I think it's pretty self-evident what I'm talking about there. And if you don't know what I'm talking about there, then you must be from the generation, that brainwashed generation that weren't made to sort of like question authority or look further into things than you need to, according to the story that's being told to you by the state. The state just, big brother loves you, or big sister, or whatever you want to call the ruling system that we are living in. Does it really can answer these questions? We can surround ourselves with the comforts of developed society, machines and whatnot that keep us warm. We have hot and cold flowing water if we're lucky. Things that keep us alive and make us more comfortable or amuse and entertain us. In the end, what are these? Are these distractions? Are these just mere amusements to make the toil that we have as willing consumer slaves to the system more happy? For if we didn't have those things, I guess the drudgery of most people's lives in relation to doing jobs that they perhaps don't really enjoy or are stuck in vocations they don't really want to do, like the thousands of factory workers in China who have to do 14-hour shifts and for a pittance. Some of them they're pretty much basically. I've come to the conclusion when I was a lot younger that we're all slaves. We're slaves to the system. We're slaves to a system that molds us into obedient consumers whose only important thing to do is to eat shit, spend money, buy shit, and die. Apart from that, there's really we are insignificant. But I don't agree with any of that. I think we're all important. Everything that we have to say, everything we perceive and say to one another influences the way the world is. So if we don't have a voice, if we don't have an individual perspective that is valid, then what is there? There's nothing. There's just a few people who think that their opinions and what they're saying is more valid than others. And so I want to expand on that a little further about human nature. I also worked out, I think, in my mid-20s, that there are really two types of people. There are two main, and then there are innovators and people who do not like to follow, but actually like to experiment and creatively work out their own ways of doing things. These people are in a very tiny minority. And often, those types of people, the creatives, or the people who innovate or try to, experiment to make, say, some sort of advance to make something work better or do something that makes it easier or better for them to achieve a desired objective or goal, those people end up not fitting in with everybody who does all the established things that they learnt from everybody else in exactly the same way. So there are a huge number of followers. People just basically assume that the way that the authority that showed them how to do something is the way you do it, and there's no other way. It's a bit like the story about skinning a rabbit. How many ways are there to skin a rabbit? But that's a digression I don't want to get into. So I'll put this in perspective in terms of, anthropology. When you look at historically into the prehistoric times when Cro-Magnon human beings, Cro-Magnon people were essentially identical to what we are now. Same brain capacity, same skeletal structures, essentially exactly the same. Homo sapiens human beings that we know of now were the same 200,000 years ago. 150,000 to 200,000 years ago, and it keeps being pushed back. They think they might have found that there are hominids that are identical to Cro-Magnon that date back as much as 500,000 years, which is a long time. That's going through several ice ages. That's that's way before any sort of like recorded history. The only things we have, from those times, of course, are cave paintings, various artifacts, like tools. So getting back to talking about tools again and what sets us apart from other animals, and the fact that we can make fire by making sparks. Some clever Homo sapiens who'd, just started working out that they could actually walk bipedally and not have to keep putting their hands in the ground, and like their new type of sort of like, wow, I can walk around and I can balance and stand upright like an ostrich. Ooh, great. They probably came across a fire from a lightning strike. I remember that film. I don't know if anyone saw that. It was Quest for Fire. And it was set in the Stone Age times. And there was this tribe of people who were keeping a fire going because they didn't know how to make it themselves. Then they came across another tribe that actually knew, another group of Homo sapiens grouping of people that actually worked out how to make fire for themselves. They didn't have to keep this stupid ceremonial fire continuing to burn. They could actually create fire anytime they wanted to. So some clever human being, while making some sort of stone tool, has created sparks into some dry bits of brush or vegetation, and it's caught fire. It started cindering, so it probably blown into it. Sort of, what's that? And then, oh God! Look, oh, I've made fire! Wow! Oh, I'm a clever animal. Gosh, I can make fire by bashing rocks together that I'm trying to use to make some sort of simple tool. Very interesting story, that one. How we can make fire. Wow, that was a big step for us. And considering what we were competing against, giant saber-toothed tigers, woolly mammoths. I think they probably would have kept themselves. The woolly mammoths are, anything like modern elephants. They just sort of like would have ignored you unless you thought you were a threat to their young. So getting back to the Stone Age, right, and the very first beginnings of the Stone Age, the Neolithic. No, not the Neolithic, the Paleolithic era of human history spans tens of thousands of years. Something like 100,000 years, we only use stone tools and we could make fire by bashing rocks together. Or rubbing sticks together, or creating friction, or a spark and getting some sort of or heat going by friction, etc. So that was our clever thing that we could do, that allowed us to group together and hunt together, and our only chances of survival, being actually quite vulnerable creatures, was to cooperate with one another and go out in big packs, hunting packs like dogs do, like wolf packs and stuff, and sort of attack woolly mammoths with sharpened sticks and great big rocks, or mowers, if you like, or other large creatures, and then drag them back to the cave, carve them up, make a fire, and cook them or eat them raw, take their skins and use those to make us warm. We lived like that for how long? 150,000 years. It's a ridiculously huge amount of time that we only used stone tools, made fires, and hunted stuff as hunter-gatherers. And, this is controversial, but we may have known how to cultivate plants. I think people knew where to find, plants that were good for us to eat by watching other animals, and could dig up yams and other simple vegetables or grasses that were nice to the taste, or collecting honey, all these other things, so we didn't even have domesticated animals. We did make friends with wolves, though. There is evidence that we had dogs. Dogs was one of our first companions. And then horses came along as well. And then we started, experiments in animal husbandry. And in some cultures, some parts of the world, people made friends with things like eagles and hawks, falconry, smaller cats, and larger cats. So, you can see that we are clever as animals. We work out ways of being able to cooperate with other species, which is completely not fight or flight. This is create a symbiotic relationship. Let's see if we can actually work together, and can we communicate? I don't have to run away with you. I don't have to be afraid of you, and I don't have to fight you because you're not a threat to me, and maybe we can work together to actually make our mutual situation better. This is how we survived. We started forming relationships with other species so that they could be our companions to help us with our hunting, with other things, show us what was good and what was not good, with their more enhanced senses, like their senses of smell and that type of thing. So you can see that our relationship with wolves sort of like evolved, so that we ended up breeding sort of domesticated wolves into modern dogs. That is astounding. You think about it. All these different animals. But now we're being told that our encroachment onto nature and our interactions with animals has brought about all these horrible new diseases like MERS and SARS, and this new one and everything. Where actually, I think the complete opposite of that. I think we need to try and connect with as many different species as possible to become friends with them, like we did with horses, early horses, types of horses, early types of cats, and early types of birds, and with falconry and all those things. Where would we have been if we had not domesticated cows for for an easy supply of like milk or whatever, or if we hadn't made friends and done animal husbandry with all these animals. We need to. That's something that is ongoing and is part of our evolution. But getting back to how there are two types of people. Most people who follow what has already happened. So the types of people that are creative and innovative and try new things, or want to sort of like experiment with the existing order, or maybe to either improve it or actually discover new things, are the types of people who probably made friends with wolves, who made friends with horses, and brought them into domestic relationships with people. The same type of people were often outcast, I think, in many ways, by those around them. There are some anthropologists who have written about these things, talk about the Neanderthals. The Neanderthals apparently were very sensitive. They weren't so like thuggish, brutish, stupid other types of humans. Actually, they were very intelligent. Their brain capacity was easily as large as Cro-Magnon. So they also have known to have had funerary rituals, such as putting flowers in their graves, which is something. And they had musical instruments. Neanderthals had bone flutes. They had various other types of instruments that they played, and music. So they probably sung and danced as well. They had an actual culture. That is culture, which apparently, according to some prehistorians, believe that they taught Cro-Magnon people how to do that. But some strange reason they seem to be wiped out. Like Cro-Magnons were just tended to have a nastier streak than Neanderthals, and theoretically they were supposed to have wiped them out because they were different. So it's a bit of a shame because Neanderthals could have existed side by side, but apparently they just all died off, and we had something to do with it. Cro-Magnon, the Cro-Magnons, Cro-Magnon, Cro-Magnon, the Cro-Magnon human beings for a long time, and Neanderthals, we made stone tools. Stone tools are very simple. For more than 50,000 years, in order to make a stone tool that could cut open an animal so that we could cook it and take its skin off its body, we're chipped only on one side. So everybody did it the same because I guess, each successive generation learned how to make their stone tools, and it became almost like a hardwired thing where you're going to make a knife out of a stone. Let's chip everything off the edge, on one edge of it with another stone. Chunk, 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 chunk. Oh, now I've got a cutting tool. Great. Whee! And they're effective. But somebody, a creative, somebody who thinks of themselves and thinks of maybe who's experimental and is a bit of a freak in relation to everybody else who's doing everything that everybody else does, like sheep, decided that maybe I can improve the stone tool. Perhaps we can improve this. I might see what happens if I chip the other side of this flat river stone. Let's see what happens. Chunk, 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 chunk. Turned it over. Chunk, 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 chunk. Oh, this amazingly creative human being, one person, worked out a way of improving stone tools overnight that made them sharper, better than they were before. But everybody had been making that stone tool the same way for something like 50,000 years. Can you imagine that? We had no improvement in our stone technology and our stone tool making technology for 50,000 years until one creative person came along and thought, let's chip the other side of it. Let's see what happens if we do that. Maybe while they were doing it, somebody else is going, "What are you doing? That's not how you make a stone tool. What's wrong with you? You're weird. You're an idiot. I mean, what do you think you're doing? You're just breaking it. It's not going to work, Chipping both sides of that thing it's just going to make it weaker. It'll fall apart. You don't or however they spoke." And, that would have been the mass consensus of everyone around them. This guy's making stone tools, he's doing it differently. He's doing it differently to the rest of the tribe. He's doing it differently to everybody. No one else has done this before. It's like, yeah, look. And then, he shows it to them. It's like, look. It's because it's so different. It's like, what? Oh, my God. It's a different type of stone tool. It's been chipped on two sides instead of one. But actually, that was a major evolution in stone tool making. From there on, it caught on. Maybe instead of like being stoned to death for stoned to death, get it? It's a joke. In the Stone Age, for making stone tools in another way, somebody thought, oh, actually, that's a good idea. Look, it's actually cutting through that through the skin of that saber-toothed tiger that we speared much more quickly and easier than the one I made. I wonder how that guy did that. So they sort of go and say, "Hey man, where did you get your cool tool? How did you do that?" I said, turn over to the other side, chip on the other side. Look, so he makes sharp. Oh my God. So that was 50,000 years of evolution to work out how to turn a fucking stone over to actually chip it on both sides to make it sharper and a better sharpening tool. That's how stupid people are. That's how many followers there are. That's why everybody imitates everyone else. That's why we're just basically like apes. We just imitate everything else everybody else does. So monkey see, monkey do, monkey hear, monkey speak, monkey. So that's really the vast difference between the followers and the creators. The creators generally see through a lot of what's going around them and have an imagination. They have a creative element which sets them apart from others who don't have any form of creativity. Everyone has some form of innate creativity. They want to sort of like bend things around to sort of like find their own little, ways or things. But in general, most people just basically imitate and follow exactly what they're seeing as a model for whatever it is around them, like everybody else does. But occasionally there are creators that come along that deviate from the norm and want to work out, say, their own way or a better way or a different way of doing achieving the same objective, whether it's cutting the hide off a freshly killed animal, making a better stone tool to do that with, or other ways of creating fire even, or even alternative modes of accommodation that aren't a cave, like building some type of shelter with their newly improved stone tool, attacking chunks of wood and trying to bind them together with various forms of woven grass. So, this 100,000 years of our evolution took us half of that time to work out how to make better stone tools by listening to some freak who was doing everything differently, and maybe the first few that worked out this new way of doing it got probably stoned to death because they were going against the propaganda of what is a good stone tool, of what is not a good stone tool. So so that that type of propaganda is the consensus mind, the general melee of what people accept as being the norm, the actual norm of what is normal. It's normal to make a stone tool with only one face of it being chipped away to make a cut. And then the new normal after that was, oops, let's chip both sides. Now I've got a much better cutting tool. God knows how they worked out how to make these things. I can barely make one myself that is super accurate, but they always do come back anyway. But look, boomerangs, man, like what? tens of thousands of years ago, they made an aerodynamically perfect thing that spanned through the air and came back to them. You know, we worked out a way of doing that. You know, people worked out a way of doing that by experimenting. And then once a person worked out their ultimate model of how to make a good boomerang, everyone else copied it. You know, okay, I want to do it that way, and this is how you do it. This is how you make one. There must have been one particular progenitor, one person who was creative who pioneered it, just as the stone tools that were chipped on both sides were pioneered. And this type of pioneering is going on amongst the creators all the time. Which brings me back to the totalitarian thing. So I think totalitarian has a lot to do with conservatism. You know, being keeping the established order the way it is. If we kept the established order the way it is in the Stone Age and only chipped our stone tools on one side, we'd probably still be living in caves, hunting animals with sharpened sticks. And the totalitarian order of things would have been enforced by brutish, quite thick, unintelligent and uncreative bullies who just keep the order in order to sort of have more sexual partners, I suppose, or mates, so that they could be the the supposed alpha male. That's also, I find that an offensive concept, the alpha male, beta male, mega male. I sort of regard myself as a mega male. You know, I'm the last one because, the one who's at the back is always sort of like looking out for the ones in front. You know, this whole thing is based on, trying to think that human social organization is the same as gorillas. Well, it's not. We sort of established a long time ago that it's actually what we can do with our brains rather than our brawn that sets us apart and makes us, gives us a greater ability to survive on the planet or work with whatever's around us. Not how, like Bam Bam, we can plow through it, smash our way through and destroy and dominate, control and conquer. Those traits are still there though. You see, the uncreatives, the ones that didn't natives, the ones that didn't buck the social, who just kept doing things the way everybody else had been doing things, kept things in place. The conservatives, if it was up to them, would probably never even have gone beyond, improved stone tools. So so getting back to totalitarianism and studies sociology, but a lot of it's basically pretty straightforward, isn't it? You think about it, people order themselves into an order where they can feel like they have a place. Often there is a hierarchy in the way that we socially order. There doesn't actually necessarily have to be a hierarchy. I mean, people who are more prominently placed, who follow the dictates of a so-called leader. I mean, aren't the greatest leaders the ones who can take the advice of others to improve the decisions of the greater collective? I think so. So if we allow ourselves to be led and controlled by non-creators who are telling us that we are not allowed to think for ourselves, to use our own brains and our own minds to assess what we think a situation is in relation to ourselves. I'm talking about individualism and autonomy. I believe wholeheartedly in autonomy. I think we could autonomously rule ourselves to create a society where everybody fits into it so that they are using whatever skills that they have to contribute to that society in the best way that they can. but not expect any reward from it apart from the altruistic giving, bringing about a better situation for themselves and everyone else around them. So it's whatever you do is for the common benefit of all, but the common benefit of all, because we are all giving, is reciprocated in such a fashion that we all look after one another without expecting something in return. We are all giving. If we all give, then our time, our energy to look after one another. This is an idealistic idea. Then, and not expecting anything in return, then we would live in absolute abundance, surely. I mean, and isn't that actually really how we've managed to survive for so long against saber-toothed tigers? The various things that threaten our survival. We've had to team together to do these sort of things. And so, there's not always one head honcho. There's sometimes a head honcho and his intelligent mate side, and there could be a wingman. It's like his left hand man and his right hand. Talks to him now and then because he knows that actually, even though he's the leader, his mate's actually brighter than he is. He's actually a bit more creative and can sometimes, so, who you think the leader is isn't really the leader. He's actually just the propped up, charismatic figure that's actually sort of riding on the intelligence of his more intelligent mates. But because he's a better people person or whatever, or more popular, he's the one who's sort of like, the leader. But the leader's sort of got his people are really actually guiding the leader to be whatever he is, make a lot of assumptions that we have about human organizations sort of laughable. And, I've got a lot of opinions about this. I don't believe in the alpha male thing. I think that's ridiculous. You have to have, in society, you have to have a collective body of people who have various skills in order to make a society work. You have elders who are older, who have the wisdom of years, who have seen many things. There might be 2 generations older than you are, and have seen changes or know what's going on with greater, because they've seen it all before. Then it's not as new or dramatic to them as it is to the younger generations who are just seeing something like this for the first time. So, we need our elders. We need those sort of people to be able to advise us about, what happens when something or other happens in the society. It's natural. So there are many leaders. There's not just one charismatic alpha male that's got all the bitches and tells you what to do and whacks people on it with a club because he's the biggest, strongest gorilla who could go, I am the leader, listen to me, I am... Actually, no, we're a bit more than gorillas. We have a brain. We can sort of like reason things out, and rather than using brawn, use our collective skills and to conquer various issues that we're facing in our day-to-day struggle for survival. Going back to the Stone Age, so some clever person worked out that they could make sharper tools out of stones by turning them over and shipping them on the other side. That took 50,000 years. So that says a lot about how many people are really just follow the consensus, the status quo, and how many people don't and actually want to do something, do it differently, or find a better or a new way of doing things. These people are very different. These are creative people with imaginations. Unfortunately, those sort of people don't end up making their way into power and politics these days. Generally, they're more creative at being able to sort of influence people to do what they want and control others and thirst for power rather than actually wanting to assert. You've got to look at the motivations of our supposed leaders. What are their motivations for gaining this position, this supposedly, in inverted commas, exalted position above others that gives them certain powers to, maybe pass laws or control massive armies or monopolize businesses or um, influence social policy for their ideologies. It's a huge one, really. What are the motivations there? Are they working out of an altruistic goal? And when you look at modern politics, most politicians are pushing some agenda to the win the approval of potential voters, but their motivations. What are their motivations? Are they wanting to get in positions of power to make people's people's lives better or their own? What's their trip? So look at that. Look at that. Think about that for a while. What is their trip? What do they want to do with this power? On the whole, most politicians are there because they have an ideology. So really, when you look at politics, you look at organization of society. We vote for these various, political parties and leaders. But when we vote them in, nothing really drastically changes about the organization of the structure of the society that we're in. It still pretty conservatively retains its same structure. We still have, same power companies. We have the same. Well, if the power has been privatized, so that it's sort of more, capitalistic rather than socialistic. You have the same ministers, like looking after the same areas. Minister of Forestry, Minister of Health, Minister of this, Minister of that. It all sort of remains the same. If we were really voting for people who had policies and wanted to sort of like effect change, they would be doing more than tweaking a law here and there. They would be doing sort of like dramatic restructuring of society in um, every single change of government. There would be massive restructuring, like uh, but there isn't. They're all just keep the established order going the way it is. Maybe tweak the amount of tax people are not paying or not paying, or introduce a new type of tax for this, that, or the other. But there's nothing really super drastically, you know, altered in the way things are done in our social democracy. The business still keeps going. Capitalism, it all keeps going. The same people are in the same positions. The supposed government aren't restructuring the society we live in at all, very much, really, when it comes down to it. They're just tweaking a few things here and there to suit their political ideologies, which aren't really that dramatically different from one another. So we have had a few governments which have dramatically altered things or created sort of like new bodies to oversee things. I remember the disintegration of the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, the DSIR. The dear old DSIR was an amazing institution. It was a government body that was neutral. It did research into almost everything you could possibly imagine, and had a team of really amazing scientists and professionals who measured and monitored things really accurately to sort of get an idea of what's going on. It's a proper inquisitional team. You know, keeping everything in order. The DSIR, what happened to the DSIR? So it became dissolved. They created these other bodies called like Landcare Research, and there's a few others. But they should have left the DSIR alone. It would have been, you know. And so what happened to the unions? There were unions. Everyone was like, you were part of the union. Anyone who had like a 9 to 5 job never really had a 9 to 5 job. Being a muso, work odd hours, and I don't know, never really wanted to fit into that system anyway. But that's just me. But so what happened to the unions? And then they started changing the laws again. It goes back to we started swinging towards there weren't unions. The unions lost all their power. You didn't have to be part of the union if you had a job. They couldn't negotiate better wages for people because they had less control, because the Employment Contract Act came out so that people as individuals would negotiate their wages with their employers at various stages, various degrees of ripped offness. And the unions had less, the voice of the people. The workers, the proletariat, had less power to be able to, so strikes stopped happening. You notice there's hardly any strikes these days. There used to be strikes all the time. People go, right, we're striking, we're not going to work until we get this pay rise, blah, blah, blah. They still happen, of course, yes, but they do. And are the unions behind it? I don't know, because, I'm not part of that scene anymore. But I was. I'm a member of the Service and Food Workers Union. Have been for a long time, but I'm not a paid up member at the moment. But they would sort out my problems that I had with, because musicians are regarded as a service industry, and we're lumped in with like baristas, chefs, restaurant operators, that type of thing. Service and Food Workers Union. So in the hospitality trade, musicians have representation as within the hospitality, and so I joined a union. They never actually really did anything for me ever. They were able to give me some contracts that I could use if I wanted to for venues and that type of thing. But and also a special little card that gave me sort of reductions on certain things, and it was quite fun being a union man. I'm part of a union. Woohoo! Wow, I must be a communist. Wear a red hat and tote my star around, and proud of the proletariat. Yes, proud of the people. So, I mean, let's get back to totalitarianism. So, we have this word freedom. We have this word totalitarianism. We have the control of the people, who don't have to be controlled if they don't want to, but seem to need some sort of authority, like a mummy or daddy figure, saying what they should do or shouldn't be doing, or what's right or wrong, etc., etc. So, moving right along, these musings on totalitarianism have gone from everywhere from prehistoric anthropology to the social organization of society. And then so we use the word society. It's interesting, that one, isn't it? Society. Society used to be sort of the, you know, the higher echelons of the of the structure. It's like people who were in high society were like nobles, lords, or had some sort of affinity with they were a ruling class. So yeah, um, just sort of waffling now. I think I've almost said as much as I can, or I haven't really, but I've wandered, digressed too far off topic to really expound my coup d'etat. This is it. This is the thing that just tears apart everything. Here is the statement: we are all people. We all desire at least some degree of freedom to express ourselves however we like. Whenever a an authority comes along and says to us that we authority comes along and says to us that we can or cannot say or act in a certain manner because it goes against their guidelines of what is good for what they think is good for the community, then alarm bells go off in my head. They make me think of dystopian works of genius by authors, workers in grey clothing going to these boring factory jobs. That was born out of the Industrial Revolution, where people were taken away from the fields. This is similar to what's happening now with the supposed Agenda 21. You taken away from the fields to work in factories to build machines for the great steam age. And the men were away from their families, the whole villages and communal living in smaller sort of semi-agrarian groupings that were in touch with nature and the organicness of life were taken away to stony, soulless, polluted, industrial, growing cities that full of filth and grime and nothing natural, but just the artificial sort of fire technology of of, of human beings that were becoming more and more divorced with nature. And this has sort of led up to the current day where we can surround ourselves in such artificial environments that we actually don't even need nature and can exist in a tin can in space. It's quite astounding, really, that in such a harsh environment we have created an artificial support systems that are a a manipulation of existing nature with a capital N things around us to surround ourselves in a bubble of an environment that can allow us to survive in a allow us to survive in an environment where no other living thing that we know of as life could possibly survive in. How far we could take that technology, we can go down to the depths of the ocean. We can exist in space. We have this, just technology and machinery that allows us to transcend nature in such a way that, but we still need nature and we are still part of nature. So this dichotomy that has made everything so deranged with human beings. We now see ourselves as so different from our fellow species of Gaia, of Mother Earth, of this earth, of our living ecosystem, that we can suspend ourselves from the ecosystem. Hence, the words that we have come up with now for ourselves, such as human instead of people. I mean, even seeing ourselves as an alien viewing a species. We could see ourselves that we could alienate ourselves from the earth. Maybe if we could actually develop our technology to even, printing organic matter and proteins, we could actually have a completely artificial environment that we could live in perpetuity that has no elements of anything that has come from Earth. That's a very weird and interesting idea that's extended into quite a few works of science fiction. That's still digressing. But getting back to totalitarianism, so do we place all of our faith in science? Do we place our faith in the governments that rule us? Do we place our faith that everything we are being told by science, by the media, by the screens that are flashing in front of our face and mesmerizing us to obey and consume, is that really a trustworthy authority? One would look at examples in the past where we've turned to our supposed government. Govern, mental. Mental as in the mind, as in us. Govern. To govern, right? Govern, mental. So, just think about the word for a minute. But so we can keep looking at this, the governmental authorities that most people just follow, finally thinking, yes, they know better, they know everything. Everything we told is right. Yes, we should have to do this, that, and the other. Yep, they know better. They, you know, um, that's not what someone like me, a creative, thinks like. Generally, we have some suspicions. We want to know the motivations. We want to know, well, why should things be like this? Why should I have to do this, that, or the other? And then you want to find out for yourself. And if you do, and you do find out for yourself why or what so, and you find something that actually differs, and that there seems to be some type of agenda behind what this supposed authority is telling us we can, should, or should be doing, and then you start speaking out against that in order to change it, and that authority starts telling you that you are a criminal for doing so, that tells me that we have headed down the slippery slope into a similar situation to what happened just before the revolution in China, just before the Nazi takeover of Germany and wider Europe, with their genius logo, by the way, of using a peace symbol from the Hindus to lull people into a false sense of security that they were in some benevolent, totalitarian, authoritarian state that wanted world peace. Interesting. So we can strive to be as good a person as we possibly can by living our life according to the morals and ethics that we think are good for our fellow person. I think autonomously on our own, if we can If we can be the best person we can be, even if you want to have some invisible eye of God watching everything you're doing and carefully making sure that you are being a good Boy Scout or doing things that are for the good of everything and not causing harm to others. It's interesting, that's take that from religion, Buddhism and Christianity. Is like do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Be kind and good to one another. These are just basic things everyone does anyway, or wants to do anyway. We can't always be perfect and live like that, though. We don't need the fucking state going. Be kind to each other. It's like what are they saying? They're saying be a human being, be a person. I mean, what are they? Are they trying to be our religious ministers? Are they trying to replace the what our local cleric or is pronouncing from his podium in churches, or what is this? What is this message? What do we need this message for? Be kind to one another. I mean, who isn't kind anyway? I mean, what are they assuming that everybody is a nasty piece of mean word that is trying to hurt everyone around them like some sort of sadistic asshole? It's like people aren't actually like that. And if they were like that, we wouldn't survive the ice ages. We wouldn't have been able to team up together to fight off saber-toothed tigers with our newly developed double-edged stone weapons and tools, arrowheads, or sharpened sticks, spears, etc. It's almost as though they're trying to tell us that we have to be human or something, or human beings. We have to be people, and not vicious dogs that have got rabies or something. What the fuck sort of message is that? It beggars belief. It's like it's sort of something you would tell a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old or a toddler who sort of is still a bit, it's a bit wild. I remember when my boy was about 2 or 3, he was half wild. He was trying to pull my hair out. I had to teach him, and hurt, because it's not funny. This is what, what the hell is that sort of message? Oh, be kind to each other. Oh my God. It is so ridiculous. It is utterly ridiculous. It is puerile. It's almost as if we've got the state trying to, it's like what they say people are calling, the nanny state and this something. It's completely right. Why do we need to have some sort of like overemphasized reinforcement of what it is to be a reasonable functioning member of the human race? I mean, they're just the basic tenets and fundamental principles that people live by to be a good person. All right, most people want kindness, so they show kindness to others. We don't need the state saying, "Be kind to one another." Why wouldn't be? Is that being any different to what we were before? And who says that we're not being kind? This is so stupid. I mean, am I the only person who doesn't see that this is just ridiculous? Maybe I am, So I just end it there, really, because I don't really have much to say about totalitarianism. But when they start trying to dictate ethics and morals of how to be a human being, it starts making me want to vomit all over its authoritarian pluralism. If that is a word, pluralism, is yeah, prevent. Let's see if I can find another word for this. Mm, yes, caregiver thing. The caregiver, parents. So the state wants to be not only our authoritarian voice of truth, so that everybody has to basically toe the line and agree that this is what is happening. Not only that, but they also want to tell us how to be a human being and to act in a certain way and not act in another. So, are we not allowed to be angry? Are we not allowed to express unkind things towards people who are unkind to us in return, or do we just keep being kind? It's a it's a weird one. I I can't understand it. I don't know why we're being told to be kind and to one another when, well, who isn't kind? Do people wander around the streets with like things in their pocket that they pull out and hit each other with and hurt each other with and do unkind things to each other if they don't agree or this, that, and the other? No, I don't see it. I haven't seen it. Some people are like that, but usually they get locked up for um, assault or whatever. But it's just biggest belief that we need an authority to totally tell us that we have to be kind to one another. What if you don't want to be kind? What if you don't want to be anything? What if you don't actually give a shit and you actually don't want to be anything to anyone? Be kind to each other. No, I won't, because I actually don't want to interact with anyone because I don't want to have anything to do with any other people. I just want to keep to myself and get lost in my own little world. There's people like that who completely, there's people like that who completely, distract themselves completely from citizen. And you go out collection of ceramic dolls or their collection of doilies or butter dishes. And those things mean more to them than people. There's people in the world, or their cats. They might have like a million cats that they look after. So it's a strange world we're in, where we're being ordered around like little children by the state as if we don't know right from wrong, or if we don't even have any sense of morals or ethics, or if we don't even know how to conduct ourselves as human beings. We've been thrown into this state of where we need so much control, so much totalitarian authoritarianism imposing our lives that we even have to be told to behave and be nice to each other instead of wandering around punching each other in the head when we don't agree with one another, which doesn't happen anyway. So that's the end of my little spiel for today. I'm going to end the stream with these musings on totalitarianism, social order, and I hope I haven't used too many terminologies that are beyond the scope of whoever is listening. I'm attempting to try and use this not too many large polysyllabic words. I've been told sometimes that by certain people that they can't understand what I'm saying because I'm using too many big words. So I've tried to dumb down what I'm saying and simplify it so that it's more accessible to those who might left school at the age of 15, or didn't read dictionaries like I did when I was a kid, in order to find out the meanings of every single word that I came across that I didn't know. And also read encyclopedias, and I still do. But that's what you do when you have an inquisitive mind that wishes to find out more and more about themselves, the universe they live in, people around them, the world, and what the meanings of everything is. Why are we here? That's why I studied philosophy when I went to university. I wanted to find out the meaning of life. And most people don't do that until they get much older. They assume that the meaning of life is to get a job, find a wife, make a family. And most people don't do that until they get much older. They assume that the meaning of life is to get a job, find a wife, make a family, have a white picket fence, get a happiness within being a consumer and that type of thing. I was totally different. I wanted to create things. I spent all my money on materials so that I could actually make things, make music, make people happy with sounds and music and laughter and merriment and give some joy to so many that seem so miserable. I used to busk on the street when I first started playing as a musician. When I wasn't doing real gigs, I would go out and take to the streets with my flute and play lots of merry, uplifting tunes and melodies. And watch people walking past me. Just in passing as this final story, as I would see people walking past me while I was playing my flute. I was in my own little island, my own little bubble of melodic sound on whatever flute I was playing at the time. I'd grab a flute and start playing it, and people would be walking past, and sometimes they'd notice what I was doing. Most of the time, they were completely preoccupied in their thoughts, thinking about where they were supposed to be, where they'd just been, blissfully unaware of actually where they were and what they were doing. It's just like walking. And often I would stop playing and I'd notice how many people are actually not even in the here and now. They're in some future where they're going to some meeting or they've come from or thinking about something that they've just done, or while they're walking along, totally oblivious. So I'd be so it's back. And sometimes I would just stop playing my flute, and then I'd yell out at the top of my voice, "Wake up!" Really loudly. I'd just say, "Wake up!" And then suddenly people would stop mid-step, and where did that come from? And they'd look at me, and I'd sort of like smile, and I'd grab my flute, and they'd keep playing. And some of them sort of understood. Only few, but some would understand. And others would just go, "What the hell?" So wake up, be here now, look at what's going on, use your own mind to ascertain what you think is happening, think for yourself, and don't let anyone tell you that you are right or you're wrong or whatever. Wherever you get your information, you have the right to your opinion. You have the right to see the world any way you damn well like, and no one has the right to change or say that there is something wrong with you because you see something differently or with a different perspective from that which, say, an authority or some totalitarian control trip fuckers are trying to tell you that you are, whatever you are thinking is wrong. This is thought control. This is thought police. This is exactly out of George Orwell's novel. If that starts happening, alarm bells need to start going off in your head, and you need to start questioning yourself about, am I just being a subservient, obedient consumer? Or am I doing this for what? You've got to start thinking about how you fit into things. Is it important for you to know to be a unique person, to have a personality and have an ego and an individual uniqueness about yourself? Or do you want to be one of those grey clad workers in the Fritz Lang film Metropolis, shuffling to your clocks where you adjust the hours and minutes on your clock to be the right, or fighting your, punch cards for when you clock in and clock out your slave labor for the state. So yes, are you a biological meat machine serving a mass mind control state control system, or are you a unique creative individual that has something utterly effective ideas that are as numerous as there are stars in the sky? Or do you want to be, and